All right, so today we are diving deep into the world of Mary Shelley.
The mind behind Frankenstein.
Exactly. But we're going beyond just the surface level stuff. We've got this YouTube video essay we're working with, and it takes a unique angle.
Using the Enneagram, right?
Yeah, it's analyzing Shelley through the lens of the Enneagram.
Oh, cool. So, we're using this personality framework as a way to kind of get to know the person behind the novel.
Yeah.
Not just, what she wrote, but why she might have written it.
Exactly. It's like holding up a special lens to her life and her work.
I like that.
So the video identifies Shelley as a type 4 on the Enneagram,
Okay.
specifically a social 4.
Interesting.
So for those of us who, maybe need a little refresher, when we're talking about type 4, what are the key things, especially when it comes to someone like Mary Shelley?
Well, I think with social fours, you have, that core type 4 intensity, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're deeply emotional, introspective, always kind of searching for that sense of identity, that authentic self-expression.
Right.
But here's the twist. They add this fascinating layer of really longing for connection.
Okay.
So they crave to be seen, understood for all that inner depth, even when they kind of feel like an outsider.
And that really tracks with what we know about Shelley, right?
Yeah.
From the video, she had this active social life, tons of friends, very connected to these literary circles.
Right.
It wasn't just her being holed up writing all the time.
No, not a hermit at all.
No.
And this is where it gets really interesting. So Enneagram expert Naranjo,
Okay.
he talks about how social fours can really struggle with shame and self-deprecation because they want that connection so badly.
Right.
But there's this fear that they're not quite worthy of it.
And we see that vulnerability in Shelley's own words.
Yeah.
In the video, they share some excerpts from her letters.
Oh, wow.
And she talks about feeling lonely, out of place, even confessing to feeling not good enough. It's kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah, it really makes you think about her work differently, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Suddenly, you can't help but wonder how much of those raw emotions she poured into her writing.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of vulnerability, the video also points out that Shelley was actually, quite shy.
Wait,
It's a,
Mary Shelley,
Yeah.
the woman who gave us one of the most enduring horror stories
I know.
ever, was shy.
That's what the video is suggesting
You're
here.
kidding?
Nope. And it makes you look at Frankenstein in a whole new light.
Okay.
Because here's a story about feeling like an outsider, right?
Right.
The pain of isolation, that deep yearning to be accepted.
Mm-hmm.
These are themes that would have resonated so deeply with someone like Shelley, especially if she was struggling to kind of find her place in the world.
It's like she took those feelings, those fears, and crafted them into the monster's journey.
Right. Her work becomes this reflection of her internal world.
Wow.
And this is where the video brings up another, I think, crucial factor.
Okay.
The impact of losing her mother when she was just a baby.
Oh, yeah. 10 days old.
Yeah.
That's got to leave a mark.
It makes you think about, those potential fears of abandonment the video mentioned.
Yeah.
That sense of, defectiveness that type 4s can kind of grapple with.
And you can't help but connect that back to Frankenstein.
Right.
That feeling of the monster being abandoned by his creator.
It almost mirrors...
Shelley's own potential feelings of loss and that deep longing for connection.
Exactly. And that leads us to what I think is one of the most fascinating threads in the video. This idea of the monster as Shelley's reflection. And not just in a thematic sense, but on a deeper, almost subconscious level.
So we're saying the monster isn't just a fictional creation, but potentially a physical manifestation of Shelley's internal struggles.
Right.
Which is a lot to process.
It is.
When you think about it, Frankenstein was a pretty radical concept for the time.
Oh, absolutely.
Even for someone as,
Especially for the time.
as progressive as Shelley.
Yeah, for sure. This is the early 1800s.
Yeah.
Conformity is everything, especially for women.
Oh, yeah.
They're expected to fit into these very specific roles.
Totally.
And here she comes, pouring her heart out about feeling different, about not belonging.
It's like she's tapping into this universal human experience,
Yeah.
but with this added layer of
Yeah.
societal pressure.
Yeah.
That makes it even more potent.
100%.
Mhm.
And the video makes this really intriguing point about how, for type 4s,
Mm-hmm.
creativity can be a way to process these really complex emotions,
Right.
to grapple with their inner world, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
It's as if by putting those feelings into their art, they kind of gain a sense of control, of understanding.
Right.
That might elude them in their everyday life.
Yeah. Which reminds me of when the video talks about,
Yeah.
Shelley losing her first child.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, that's
heartbreaking.
the death of her firstborn on top of, everything else she endured.
Yeah.
Must have been just utterly devastating.
Yeah. And while the Enneagram doesn't necessarily offer easy answers to these things,
Right.
it does provide this framework for understanding how these really intense life experiences can shape our inner world.
Yeah.
And for Shelley, the loss of her mother at such a young age, coupled with, these feelings of not belonging and then losing a child on top of it.
Yeah.
These weren't just events in her life.
Right.
They were forces that shaped her very being.
And maybe, just maybe,
Yeah.
it's in those dark, messy places that great art is born,
Totally.
When we can take our pain, our deepest fears and anxieties, and transform them into something meaningful.
Absolutely. Art doesn't exist in a vacuum. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's always informed by the artist's experiences, their worldview, their internal struggles, and understanding these influences can give us a much deeper appreciation for the art itself.
It's like getting a backstage pass
Totally.
to the creative process.
100%.
Understanding what shaped the creator allows us to connect with the creation on a whole new level.
For sure.
I mean, think about the monster in Frankenstein.
Right.
He's not just this one-dimensional villain.
Right.
He's complex. He yearns for connection, for acceptance.
Right.
He's capable of both great love and terrible rage.
For sure. And that kind of
the range of emotions
Yeah.
that Shelley might have been grappling with herself.
Exactly. Especially considering that social fours often gravitate towards what the video calls the dispossessed,
Yeah.
those who are marginalized and misunderstood.
Which is such a
Yeah.
fascinating connection, because it's she saw a part of herself,
Right.
or at least a part of her own struggles,
Yeah.
in those who were rejected by society.
100%.
And it's almost like she's saying, hey, I see you, I hear you, I understand your pain,
Yeah.
which feels incredibly relevant
So relevant.
today,
Yeah.
even after all these years.
Totally. In a world where everyone's trying so hard to fit in,
Mm-hmm.
Shelley reminds us that it's okay to embrace our differences, our
Yeah.
complexities.
Yeah.
It's what makes us human.
So as we kind of start to wrap up this deep dive into, Mary Shelley and the Enneagram,
Yeah.
how does this change your perspective on Frankenstein?
Right. Does it make you want to revisit the story
Yeah.
with this kind of fresh perspective?
Mhm.
Looking for reflections of Shelley herself in the narrative.
Totally.
Because that's the power of this kind of analysis.
Right.
It doesn't limit our interpretation, it expands it.
It makes you want to grab a copy of Frankenstein right now.
Right.
And just dive in.
It's like we've unlocked this secret level of the story
Yes.
by getting inside Shelley's head a bit.
100%. And it really brings us back to, our deep dive mission here,
Yeah.
getting to know Mary Shelley, the woman who brought this, monstrous masterpiece to life, but not just as an author,
Right.
but as a real person
Yeah.
with hopes and fears and her own unique way of seeing the world,
And that's the beauty of, kind of looking at her through this lens of the Enneagram.
Right.
We're not trying to box her in.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
put a neat little label on her.
Totally.
We're actually cracking things wide open.
Yeah.
Revealing more of her complexity, her motivations, the sheer depth of her creativity.
Yeah. It's we've gone from a simple sketch to a full color portrait.
Totally.
We're seeing the nuances, the contradictions,
Yeah.
all the messy, wonderful things that make her human.
Exactly. And, when you bring that richer understanding to her work,
Yeah.
something incredible happens.
So-
The words on the page,
Yeah.
they're no longer just words.
Mm.
They're imbued with the weight of her experiences, her emotions, her unique perspective.
It adds this whole other level.
Right.
Yeah.
It adds this incredible depth.
So for those of you listening, why should you care?
Yeah.
Why should you care about Mary Shelley's,
Right.
potential Enneagram type?
Yeah.
Or the inner workings of her mind?
Here's the thing. The magic of literature, right,
Yeah.
is in its ability to connect us across time and space.
Mm-hmm.
And when we take the time to like really explore the minds of authors like Mary Shelley,
Right.
we're not just engaging in like some intellectual exercise,
Right.
We're connecting with another human being
Yeah.
on a deeply personal level,
Yeah.
sharing their joys, their sorrows, their fears, their triumphs.
It's almost like building a bridge across centuries.
Yes.
Like suddenly this woman who wrote Frankenstein over 200 years ago feels incredibly relatable. Like someone you could grab coffee with and just talk to.
Privilege.
And in those shared human experiences,
Yeah.
we find common ground,
Sure.
empathy, and a deeper understanding of ourselves
Absolutely.
and the world around us.
100%.
So as we wrap up our deep dive today,
Okay.
we want to leave you with this.
Yeah.
Knowing what we've uncovered about Mary Shelley,
Right.
her sensitivity, her longing for connection, her struggles with self-doubt,
Yeah.
how does this change your perspective on Frankenstein?
Does it make you want to, like, dive back into the story with fresh eyes? Maybe search for glimpses of Shelley herself reflected in the narrative. Because ultimately, that's what we've aimed for today.
Yes.
To open new avenues of interpretation, new ways to engage with this, like, timeless story.
It's been such a great conversation.
I've had so much fun.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.